I wasn't spying. I never did that. The call had ended. At least that's what I thought. The phone was still in my hand when I set my coffee on the table and prepared to hang up. That's when I heard it. First, silence. Then, a distant noise, breathing, a muffled movement like someone adjusting their phone on a surface. I frowned. "Hello?" I asked, more out of habit than suspicion. No direct answer, but there were voices. I recognized his immediately. It wasn't the voice he used with me. Not the polite, controlled, slightly tired version he reserved for everyday conversations. This was looser, lower, too intimate to be professional. My first impulse was to hang up. My second was to laugh at myself for imagining things. My third was to stay silent. "I thought you'd already hung up," he said, in a careless tone. My heart didn't race. There wasn't that scene the movies promise, with trembling hands or tears falling to the floor. There was just clarity. A female voice responded with something I couldn't hear clearly at first, then laughter. Light, complicit, the kind of laughter that doesn't ask permission to exist. I leaned back in the chair. The coffee went cold. I didn't feel anger. Not yet. What I felt was something far more dangerous. Complete attention. He kept talking, as if he were safe, as if the world were perfectly in place. He commented about his day, about traffic, about how some people didn't notice anything even when they were so close. I smiled, not because I found it funny, but because in that instant I understood exactly who that some people was. Me. Funny how the truth doesn't come in screaming, it comes in sitting down. I didn't hang up, didn't interrupt, didn't clear my throat to warn him I was still there. I let him feel comfortable. People reveal a lot when they believe they've already won. I heard vague references, a quick meeting, a disguised complaint, a phrase that didn't seem like a big deal, but changed everything. "She trusts me." There was no shock. There was closure. Like when you close a book before the last chapter because you already know exactly how it ends and realize you don't like the story anymore. I waited a few seconds after the call finally dropped for real. Only then did I place the phone on the table. I went to the hallway mirror, observed my face like someone analyzing a stranger. No tears, no drama, just eyes too attentive for someone who had just heard what I'd heard. "Interesting," I murmured, not because it was curious, but because it was definitive. That night he came home as always, kissed my face, asked about my day, commented on some useless banality that calm people use to fill silence. I smiled, the same smile as always. He never noticed when something changed in me, always confused my calmness with naivety. And that's exactly what made him keep talking too much, trusting too much, making mistakes again. That night I slept early, not from exhaustion, but because important decisions require rest. While he believed the call had dropped, I had already understood something far more important. Nothing had dropped, everything had been revealed, and I hadn't said a word yet. The next morning he woke first. I heard the sound of the shower before I even opened my eyes. Running water, the sound of the glass door, the towel being tossed carelessly on the bed, the routine intact, the tranquility of someone who believes everything is under control. I kept my eyes closed. He approached and kissed my forehead, like he did every day. An automatic gesture, almost polite. "Sleep well?" he asked. "I did," I replied. It was true, strangely true. I watched every movement as he dressed. The light blue shirt, the one he said matched me. The watch adjusted on his left wrist. The slight care in arranging his hair in front of the mirror, something he didn't do with so much attention before. Before, I would have called it care. Now, I called it rehearsal. "I'm leaving early today," he commented, feigning casualness. "Meeting outside the office." I nodded, spreading butter on toast, as if it were the most important thing in the world. "Of course." He observed me for a second longer than normal, maybe expecting a question, maybe an explanation request, maybe guilt. I offered nothing. When the door closed, the house fell silent. Not a heavy silence, a clean silence, organized, as if it were finally at the right volume. I opened my phone, not to investigate, not to search through old messages or look for suspicious names. I didn't need that. The truth had already presented itself. Instead, I did something unexpected even for myself. I grabbed a notebook. It wasn't a diary. I never liked that word. It was just a list. I wrote at the top of the page what I know. Below, without emotion, without adjectives. He talks more when he feels safe. He underestimates silence. He believes trust is invisibility. Then another page. What I won't do. That one was even easier. Confront, beg, cry in front of him. I closed the notebook and went to work. The world hadn't stopped because my life had changed. People kept crossing the street, complaining about coffee, late for irrelevant appointments. The difference was that for the first time in a long time, I was present. I spent the day observing small things. How he took 3 minutes longer to respond to my message. How he used a period where he would have used an emoji before. How he asked if I'd be home that night, something he never asked. I arrived before him. I prepared dinner. Nothing special, nothing that called attention. The same safe meal as always, because guilty people prefer normalcy. He arrived too animated for someone who said he'd had a long day. "You can't imagine the traffic," he commented, laughing. "Chaos." "I can imagine," I replied, serving the plate. He ate with appetite, talked a lot. Too much. Small stories, easy laughs, misplaced enthusiasm. People trying to convince themselves usually talk more than they need to. I observed without interrupting. "You're quiet today," he finally commented. I raised my eyes slowly. "I'm thinking." "About what?" I smiled lightly. "About how people change without noticing." He laughed, relieved. Thought it was something generic, philosophical, harmless. Little did he know that every word he said was being carefully placed in the right spot, like pieces of a puzzle that didn't need to be assembled anymore, just confirmed. That night, lying beside him, I felt the phone vibrate on the nightstand. He moved too quickly, turning to reach the device before me. "Work," he explained before I even asked. "Of course," I replied. I turned to my side, facing the wall. I didn't feel like crying. I felt like learning. Because when someone shows you who they are with such clarity, the only truly unforgivable thing is pretending you didn't see. And I saw everything. I didn't have to look for long. Truth rarely hides well when it believes it's not being watched. It was the tie. He left his jacket hanging on the chair that night, a rare thing. He always put everything away with excessive, almost ritualistic care. That by itself was already a deviation. I picked up the piece naturally, like someone just wanting to organize the house. It was dark blue, silk, discreet. I knew that tie. I had bought it myself years before, but something was wrong. The knot was different. Not the kind of difference any person would notice. It was too subtle for distracted eyes. The crease didn't follow his pattern. He always made a simple knot, functional, almost lazy. This one was more elaborate. I ran my fingers over the fabric, feeling a perfume that wasn't mine. It wasn't strong. It wasn't invasive. It was careful, like someone who wants to be remembered without leaving obvious traces. I smiled to myself. In the inner pocket of the jacket, I found the note. It wasn't hidden. It was forgotten. And there's a huge difference between the two. A paper folded twice, quick handwriting, slanted, no signature. "Next time, don't hang up so fast." I read it once, then again. There was no shock, no surprise, just confirmation. I kept the note in my pants pocket with the calm of someone collecting evidence that doesn't need to be explained yet. Not at that moment. When he came out of the bathroom, still drying his hair, he asked casually, "Have you seen my blue tie?" I raised my gaze slowly. "Which one?" He hesitated for half a second. Too small to be noticed by someone not paying attention. Too big to go unnoticed by me. "The dark blue one." I handed over the tie without saying anything. Watched as he redid the knot. Went back to the old way, the simple one, as if correcting a mistake. "Everything okay tomorrow?" he asked. "Everything," I replied. He left whistling. That night, I sat at the table with the notebook open again. I wrote another phrase, below the previous ones. They always leave something behind when they believe they've already taken everything. I folded the note and placed it between the pages, not as a memory, as a tool. I didn't need to confront, didn't need to ask, didn't need to hear anything more. Now I had something concrete, something that existed outside my head, something that couldn't be denied if one day it became necessary. But it wasn't the day yet. I put the tie back in its usual place, hung the jacket in the closet, kissed him goodnight as always. He fell asleep quickly, calm, safe. I stayed awake a few more minutes, looking at the ceiling, because from that moment on it wasn't about discovering anymore. It was about deciding when, and I already knew exactly what to do with what I had in my hands. The next morning, I did something simple. I used the tie, not on his neck, on mine, not as an obvious accessory, just tied loosely, draped over my white shirt while I had coffee. A detail too small to seem like an accusation, too big to be a coincidence. He entered the kitchen, still adjusting his shirt buttons. He stopped, didn't comment, but stopped. "New fashion?" he asked, forcing a smile. "I thought it was pretty," I replied. "I forgot to put it away yesterday." He swallowed hard. It wasn't theatrical, it was automatic. "Looks good on you," he said after a second. I nodded, without thanking him. The rest of the morning was strangely quiet. He left without a kiss, without the usual comment about traffic, without that rehearsed security. In the afternoon, I received the message, "I'll be home a bit later today." I didn't ask why. I just replied, "Okay." And that's when something changed. People who cheat live on narrative control. They need to know what the other feels, thinks, expects. When that disappears, the ground starts to give way. He arrived home earlier than announced. "I thought you'd be late," I commented, closing my laptop. "Changed my mind." "Good," I replied. We had dinner almost in silence, not comfortable silence, attentive silence, the kind of silence that listens more than words. After dinner, he went straight to the shower, left his phone on the table. For the first time, I didn't touch it, but I didn't need to. The screen lit up on its own, with a notification too brief to hide the intention. A name saved as initials, a phrase too short to be innocent. I didn't read it, didn't memorize it, didn't take a photo. I smiled, because in that moment, I understood something essential. I no longer needed more proof. He needed fewer certainties. When he came out of the shower, he found the phone exactly where he'd left it, but he found something more. The note. I placed it folded under the device. No explanation, no signature. He stopped, breathed deeply, picked up the paper with excessive care. "What's this?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "A reminder," I replied. "Sometimes we forget important things." "About what?" I looked at him calmly. There was no anger, no accusation, just presence. "To hang up." He went pale. We didn't argue, didn't shout. There was no confession. He went to sleep, restless. I slept in peace, because from that night on, he was no longer sure of anything, and I had all the answers I needed. He changed in the following days. Not obviously. He changed in excess. He started sending too many messages, asking where I was, what time I'd return, if I needed anything. A sudden interest that in another time would have seemed like care. Now it seemed like surveillance. "Want me to pick you up today?" he asked, when he never asked that before. "No need," I replied. "I'm going straight home." He arrived after me that night, brought flowers, the ones I liked years ago, not the ones I'd mentioned recently. Classic mistake. "For you," he said, extending the bouquet like it was a shield. I took the flowers, observed them with real attention. "Thank you." I placed them in any vase, not at the center of the table, not as a symbol of reconciliation, just there. He observed, evaluating my reaction, found nothing he could interpret. "Is everything okay between us?" he finally asked. It was the question he'd been rehearsing for days. I looked at him with genuine curiosity, like someone who really thinks before answering. "Everything is clear," I said. "Clear how?" "Like when the noise stops, but the sound continues." He blinked, confused. "I don't understand." "I know. It was that night he made the next mistake. He tried to provoke me, commented casually about a new colleague at work. Beautiful, competent, intelligent. Expected jealousy, expected a reaction, expected insecurity, received a calm smile. "That's good," I replied. "I like interesting environments." He fell silent. The next day, I found something even more revealing. It wasn't a message. It wasn't a forgotten object. It was fear. He began observing my schedules, my silences, my unexplained exits. People who cheat don't handle well the possibility of having lost narrative control. "You're different," he commented one night. "Everyone changes," I replied, "but you seem distant." I set the glass on the table slowly. Not distant, lucid. That word hit him harder than any accusation would have. He tried to laugh. Couldn't. That dawn, I woke to him sitting on the bed, staring at nothing. "Did you hear something that day?" he asked, his voice too low to feign casualness. I took a few seconds to respond. Not from doubt, from choice. "Enough." He passed his hand over his face, breathed deeply. "I can explain." It was the first time he offered something close to the truth, and it came too late. "You don't need to," I said with real gentleness. "Explanations work when there's still confusion. That's not the case." He stared at me, finally understanding he'd lost something he couldn't name. It wasn't the marriage, it was the version of me that believed, and that one wasn't coming back. I didn't tell anyone, not friends, not family, not him. Real decisions don't need an audience. I started with what seemed small, changed my email password, then my bank, then everything that really mattered. Not from paranoia, from closure. There are things that only work when they remain accessible by habit, not by right. Then I scheduled lunch. Not with a lawyer, not yet. With myself. I sat in a cafe near work, ordered something simple, and opened the notebook once more. Not to write feelings, to list actions, what leaves with me, what stays, what's no longer mine. I noticed something curious. Most of what I needed was already mine, always had been. That afternoon I returned home earlier. He wasn't there. I opened the closet calmly, separated clothes, not many, just the ones I actually wore, the ones that still recognized my body, the ones that didn't have borrowed memories. I grabbed documents, the important ones, the ones nobody thinks about until they need them, put everything in a discreet folder. When he arrived that night, he noticed something different. Didn't know what. "Did you change something here?" he asked, looking around. "I organized," I replied. He nodded, unsure, like someone who feels something was moved but doesn't know what. We had dinner together, for the last time without him knowing. "We could travel," he suggested, trying to sound hopeful. "Start over." I looked at him with honest attention. Fresh starts don't happen when only one person wakes up. He lowered his gaze. The next morning, I left before him. Left the house as always. Bed made, dishes washed, no dramatic signs, just a message on his phone. No long letter, no emotional explanation. No accusations, just 3 things in the text. "Next time, don't hang up so fast. The dark blue tie is in the closet. When the call doesn't drop, the story changes." Nothing more. I went to work normally, didn't turn off my phone, didn't block anything. At 10:17 he called. I didn't answer. At 10:42 he sent a message. I didn't respond. At 11:03 another call. Then I turned off the device. Not from anger, from conclusion. Because by that point, the conversation had already happened. He just hadn't participated consciously. And I had already left. Some time later I heard he told the story differently. Said I had changed suddenly, that I went cold, that I left without warning. I didn't correct it. There are stories that don't need to be disputed. Truth doesn't lose strength because someone tells it wrong. It just stops being your responsibility. I never told exactly what I heard on that call. Not to friends, not to strangers, not to him. Not for protection. But because certain information isn't proof, it's keys, and that one had already served its purpose. Today, when I remember him, I don't feel anger. I feel something rarer. Neutrality. He was a chapter, not a trauma. not a villain. The call didn't drop, but the weight did, and that made all the difference. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to Stories We Tell, leave a like, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your support helps us keep creating stories about truth, dignity, and the courage to choose yourself, because stories that touch the heart deserve to be told and remembered. Thank you for being here.